Hey guys, I know it has been a while since my last top 3 video. There was one thing that needed to be updated that was Dro over Lorelei, and I didn't want to do it until Azathoth came out and we had a better idea of where he lands. So now that people have been playing with him and I have an idea of how useful he is, let's hop right into it. Now, these rankings are based on their utility at T4, not based on their pure strength, but based on more of their general utility. If most people can use them, they're ranked higher, and so on. There are two factions where a hero at T4 is substantially better than his version at 10 star, so I will have extra rankings for those. I will try to include rune and equipment and talents for each hero. So let's get started. Okay, so first is Alliance. Alliance, you'll notice, has been shaken up a lot. Now, Valkyrie, always clear, far away, number one. She's incredibly strong. She has high damage. She has high support. She has great healing, especially if she gets to T4. She's very tanky because of her T3 ability to resist to drop her damage reduced to 100% at 30%, 35% HP. So obviously Valkyrie far and away number one. Best gear for her is going to be Deathbreak rune if you're going to use a Gospel Song, or if you're going to use a Ragnarok, you use a regular attack rune. If your team is built around heavy burst, you can use an energy on her, but it's not always required. Talents would be attack, damage reduction, and 35% crowd control resist. And those are going to be pretty standard. But the problem is Valkyrie is very rare. She's never available as a Miracle Eyes reward, only keys. So she's one of those heroes that if you're going to be saving your keys for, she's one of the ones you'll look for. Next is going to be Ultima. Now, people didn't really expect to see Ultima back in the rankings. There's been a few people that have been pushing for her to be back in there. And now that the meta has somewhat stabilized, now Ultima comes in as a difference maker. The thing about Ultima is when she hits 50%, the whole team gets stronger. But not only that, if she manages to fire her skill, your back team gets a higher attack and speed, which means that if you can use her to force her to make your backline faster than the opponent in specific situations, you can enable a full burst team to go stronger and faster than it would have normally. So can all people use Ultima? No. You have to have a very specific team. You must have something like Kurt, Bale, Themis, something like that. Something where Ultima enables the burst damage to come at a faster than normal. Talents probably is gonna be speed, damage reduction, and obviously the crowd control resist at 35%. You definitely want to have energy on her if possible. You may or may not want a speed rune on her. It kind of depends on your opponent. Ultima is by nature the fastest unit in the game, so she may not need to go full speed in order to fire faster than the opponent's Skuld or Phoenix. So, and Ultima, very easy to get, but again, not everyone can use her. Rounding out the third is going to be Mulan. Mulan is another surprise hero. She just got buffed recently, and now her skill actually has very good mage silence. Now that mages are coming back with Bale, Themis, and Kurt all seeing high gameplay, Mulan actually becomes a lot more deadly. And on top of that, she has very high dodge, as usual, which was never a deciding factor for her, but apparently her damage is very, very good. Now, I haven't seen one in action myself, but from what I've heard, her damage is actually no joke, and her mage silence is hard to fight against sometimes. And she's easy to make, so actually, if you're really looking to fill in an alliance, she's not a bad one to choose. However, with the Aura update, you're not forced into making an alliance, so we'll see how it goes, huh? Gear, honestly, I'm not really sure on equipment setup for her. I don't know how she performs relative to other heroes, but I would assume attack, damage reduction, crowd control resist for talents, and something like Gospel Song and an attack rune. And It's going to depend on who she needs to be faster than. She's already faster than most mages, so I don't think she needs speed, but depends on who you're fighting against. Okay, next is going to be Horde. Now, Horde doesn't change much. Phoenix stays number one. I mean, Kurt by far is much, much stronger. However, Kurt needs help. He needs Skuld. He needs a team that's built around him. He needs a team that's designed to fire all of their skills before he does in order to maximize his damage. He's very susceptible to crowd control. So, in terms of general usability, Phoenix definitely is still number one in terms of convenience and power. Most people like to use him with a speed rune, but I made the decision not to because he's already faster than all of my damage dealers. It's something that you have to play with, but in general, speed rune is a safe choice for him, along with blood metal, which is the Horde artifact that gives hit rate and attack. If you don't have that, you can use Eye of Heaven. If he's tanking, you could theoretically also use something like a Bone Grip. If your team is set up for burst, you could also use an energy artifact. He is a very versatile hero. Additionally, now that the dual Phoenix nerf has happened, he's always going to be more of a... You're always only going to want one of them. And he's also always going to want to be in the front, but he doesn't have to always tank. So if he's tanking, you probably want T1 attack, T2 damage reduce, T3 reflect. If he's not tanking, T3 can be changed to the power increase. But also if he's tanking and he's dying too fast, you can change T1 to HP. Very versatile. You got to play with it. In general, if you pair him with Skuld, you want to make sure that he doesn't die before anyone else does, so that Skuld's revive is not wasted on him. So you have to really try out his combinations to see which works best for you. Next will be Kurt. Kurt will be second. Now, the thing about Kurt is he offers amazing team support. If he's in front, he increases your team's skill damage resistance, which has proven to be a significant reduction in damage. So just by having him, you can counter a lot of burst. And so, but the other thing is, he gets stronger every time an ally fires a skill, which means that he needs to fire after as many people have fired as possible in order to give him the highest possible attack when he fires his own skill, which is very, very strong. If you fought against him, you've probably seen how he blows up people in 2 rounds. So he is extremely, extremely strong. You can even use 2 of them, one in front, one in back, because this thing doesn't stack. You can only have one in front or back. This applies to peaks as well. So gear set up for him, for talents I mean, attack, damage reduction, and power increase 50%. Gear, you can use attack and Ragnarok, or Death Break and blood metal, or if your whole team has energy, you can put energy on Kurt. Last is Medusa. Now she's third kind of by default. Unfortunately, she's still terrible. Honestly, you can make her up to 10 star and don't go any further, so I'm not going to bother going into her talents because you shouldn't be making a Medusa to T4. She has great Petrify, she has great synergy with Freya. Unfortunately, she's a little bit too squishy. She dies very fast, so just not a hero that you want to be focusing a lot of resources onto. You can use a speed rune on her if you want early on, and you can use energy if you want, or you can use a blood metal, something like that. Not really that important, because she's just there as a filler. If you're using her, you know she's a filler. It's sad, but it's Medusa. What can you do? Next is going to be Elf, and here is where the shakeup happens from the last video. Number 1 definitely is Lorelei. The reason for that is because her skill just adds too much stuff. The speed reduction on her skill is gigantic. All of this resistance to these burn, poison, bleed is gigantic. She reduces enemy skill damage by 30%, so she's just amazing. In fact, if you use her right, if you build her with high speed, you can be faster than their whole team, and then reduce their entire team's speed by 20. I think it's 30 at T4, and just have your entire team go crazy on them before they can do anything. She's a direct counter to Aegina as well because of this bleed poison resistance. Something to think about. She's a great support hero. Now, the thing about her is she's support, which means she can't be primary damage. She's not going to be a solo carry. She's not going to be your first T4. You're going to regret that greatly. She just doesn't have that kind of output. You only want to make her after you've already made a bunch of other strong heroes that synergize well with her. Another thing is because she comes with energy, she fires turn 1 regardless, so you don't need to put energy artifacts on her. So gear for her, if you're going full speed, you can go speed rune, speed artifact, Queen's Crown, and talents can be speed, damage reduction, and now this is something that's interesting. Her talent 3, apparently she does more damage if you use the one where her crit rate goes up when she gets hit. So you may want to try it out between the two of them. I haven't really seen a major difference, but apparently that one is a higher potential source of damage for her. Next is going to be Dro. Now Dro kind of has really fallen off. It's not so much that she got worse, it's just that Lorelei got so much better that Dro now doesn't really have a place. Dro used to be the anti-cleric, but now that we have the T3 bubble on Heaven and Hell, for some reason Dro just misses her skill a lot. So she's still there as a potential anti-cleric, she just doesn't do it very, very effectively anymore. So you just kind of make her if you have her, but if you really are struggling for an elf and you can't get Lorelei, you might want to consider just going off Aura and making someone else instead. She's not an amazing T4. When the Aura change happens, we may see her come back as a niche counter pick, because she does silence the whole enemy team when she hits 50%, so using that as an anti-burst is a potential defensive foil tactic that should be considered. So she's not trash, but we'll see if her potential actually comes into play or not in the future. In general, she wants speed rune, she wants energy artifact. If you don't have that, you can just put a Queen's Crown on her. She wants T1 speed, T2 damage reduction, T3 poison when she crits. She's never really going to be a deciding factor in battles anymore. So she's just someone that's there, is decently strong, and you make if you really just have no other option. Last, I'm just going to keep Luna here. Luna has proven to do effectively as a tank in PvP, but is not super reliable just because she can be controlled very easily. Her damage is not bad, but overall she just doesn't have the power to make it into the upper echelon of like top tier hero. She does have strong silence and high damage reduction on her skill. Talents for her, probably T1 speed, T2 damage reduction, T3 poison on crit. Gear would be a speed rune and energy. Next is going to be Undead. Undead is the first one where the T4 transition is a huge factor. The reason is Detlaf. Detlaf's skill does 270% at 10 stars. At T4 it does 600%, meaning he is incapable of one-shotting heroes before T4. So for that reason, I have him off the list prior to T4. So moving into the heroes that I do have, number 1, Aegina, far and away. Her damage is ridiculous. She has silence when she hits 50%. She comes with her own crowd control bubble. She just is amazing. Her problem is she's very slow. She dies very fast, so she benefits greatly from having Skuld with her. She's really good, but she does have weaknesses. She also does get countered by Lorelei, so if Lorelei fires before she does, she may not land her poison and bleed and may do a lot less damage overall, so she's a strong hero that has a lot of glaring flaws. Gear for her is going to be, you want to use a Death Break rune with energy if possible, otherwise you can just use Attack rune with Ragnarok, Death Break rune with Soul Torrent. Talents For undead talents for T3, honestly, I'm just not gonna pick one, because if you know you can get a kill, you use the one for damage on getting a kill. If you struggle to get that first kill to start things off, use the one when they hit 30%. So her T1 would just be attack, damage reduction, and T3 whatever you need. T4, Detlef, is amazing. However, he does need to crit in order to kill people, and he also gets very badly stopped by Skuld, and he can be completely stopped by Valkyrie as well. So he's not reliable, he's very strong, but just not reliable. When he goes off, he really goes off. But when he doesn't, he loses you the match. So you would want to gear him. He has a lot of variable gear sets. You can either use him to max out his crit rate, in which case you'll get crits. However, crits will do less top end damage. So depending on how you want to play him, if you want to play him as RNG, where you are trying over and over and over until he lands that lucky crit in PvE, then you go with Death Break rune and Soul Torrent, Gaia Bulga, or you go with an attack rune with Ragnarok or something like that. You have a lot of options with him. However, in PvP, he may be a little bit more reliable with a crit rate rune, still also Ragnarok, but you have to play with it. You have to really see how much damage he's capable of doing, if he's constantly getting blocked by Skuld, if he's constantly firing at a Valkyrie who is reducing all the damage, stuff like that. So he's the type that will carry a team if he can, otherwise he will utterly fail. There's not a lot in between with this guy. Still a very strong hero though, definitely one worth making as a T4. Not really worth making but prior to that. So you only make him if you know that you got enough copies to take him all the way to T4. Talents then would just be attack and damage reduction, T3 is whatever. So next we have Reaper. Reaper is one of those that he's ridiculously strong as a first or second T4, and then once you get him to a full team of T4s, maybe 4 or 5 of them, he's not that good. He relies on his allies dying to make him stronger, so when he's the last one alive, he goes off with a huge skill that just blows up your whole team. But if he's the first one to die, what good is it? So he's one that's good to make only until the point where you're okay leaving him as a solo T4 in honor. So I guess he's good until you have like 13 T4s or something like that. Other thing about Reaper is he comes with massive defense break, so he does not want Ragnarok. You can pair him with a Gaia Bulga because that's slightly still useful, or you can just give up on it and use attack rune and Soul Torrent. Talents definitely is attack, damage reduction, and whichever one you need. So as you see, I have a prior to T4 list. With that one, Detlef falls off. He's not that good. Aiden comes up. Aiden is just someone that's there. He's not like a crazy strong hero. He's just someone that has potential to do some good damage because of his bleed. I'm not going to go into what he can wear. He's not really a highly recommended T4, especially with how easy Detlef is to make. So Aiden's just kind of there. Probably the same gear as Reaper. Next, I'm going to move into Heaven. Now, Heaven is a tough one. Themis is really good, but unfortunately, she's not as strong as Kurt. She doesn't carry a whole team on her own. So we're going to start with Skuld being number 1. Skuld is far and away the ultimate support hero. Her skill increases her team's defense by 20. She's got a revive, she's got a bubble at T3. She has actually quite strong healing. Just a very strong enabling hero, especially with her crowd control clearing. So she's definitely number 1. Don't take this to mean that you want to make her before anyone else, because as a support hero, you need damage. You need possibly a tank. Make her after you've made a few heroes and then throw her in. So gear from her, she doesn't want to be fast. She wants to fire only slightly faster than the rest of your damage dealers to clear their crowd control and make sure that they fire. So she pairs very well with all of those slow high damage dealers like Kurt, Themis, Aegina, Valkyrie, Detlef. So you want to have a regular attack rune on her to maximize her healing, an energy on her so that she can clear crowd control on people on turn 1. Her talents would then be, you can use attack T1 or you can use HP, depends on how you want to play it. If you find that she dies too often, try using HP. And then T3 is just always a bubble for all heaven and hell. Next will be Themis. Now Themis is very high damage. The problem is that she wants to die and revive before she fires. Now this means that if she dies first, she wastes a Skuld revive. It's very hard to control her to the point where she dies right before she fires. Reason being, when she dies, she comes back with all 3 of her heaven wing, crit chance, speed, and defense. You want her to have those before she fires, and that's not easy to control. And her top end damage is not as high as Kurt. So she's strong, but she's very, very difficult to use. There's different ways to use her. You can use her as a tank if you want her to get hit and die and then fire. Or you can throw her in the back paired with like a Kurt, or you can use her as a high burst hero paired on a regular team. So she doesn't really have a best gear set given how many potential uses she has. But in general, T1 attack, T2 damage reduction, T3 bubble gear is probably defense break rune, and then you can use energy if you want to, or you can just use a holy light justice to give her attack. Last is going to be Verthandi. Now here's the thing about Verthandi. As a tank, she's amazing. As a solo T4, she's amazing. As anything other than a tank, she's pretty useless. She doesn't do enough damage if not tanking. She doesn't do enough healing. She doesn't have enough support to warrant entire space on the team. So she's there only if she's tanking. Now with the aura changes, you are now able to use her and Skuld together with no penalties. We may see more of her in the future, but again, only if you're going to make her a tank. So with that being said, her T1 would be attack to maximize her reflect damage, T2 damage reduction, T3 crowd control resist. Gear would probably be a gift of creation if possible, otherwise Scorching Sun bone grip, and a regular attack rune. Last but not least, we're gonna go with Hell. Now, Hell is another one that T4 makes a huge difference. In terms of overall usability, Azathoth is not as high as Thought. I'll get into that when we talk about him. So we're going to start with Bale being number 1 at T4. Bear in mind this is at T4. At T4 he doesn't necessarily need Skuld to do his damage. He has good survivability, healing on all of his casts. If you pair him with some other burst heroes, he's going to do some major damage. Before T4 he really needs Skuld, but because of the bubble at T3 and his overall damage, he's a lot better at T4 than he was before. Gear, you're going to want to put Death Break and Energy on him, if possible. Otherwise, you could probably put Attack Rune and Ragnarok. Depends who you're pairing him with and how you plan to use him. T1 would be Attack, T2 Damage Reduction, T3 Bubble. So overall, just a really amazing hero, especially in Unity right now. He is very good. He's very hard to stop. Freya is very unreliable, therefore is good, but not as good as she could be. In second place is going to be Azathoth. Now, is Azathoth better? Probably. He's an amazing tank, especially at T2. He cancels Phoenix and Monkey King's revive if he lands his skill on them. His skill doesn't miss at T4, which gives a much higher chance of doing that. And his damage is currently bugged, meaning he's doing way more damage than his display shows. Because when they try to heal and they don't get it because he cancels it and then they take damage afterward, it's not counted towards his damage. That damage actually just vanishes into oblivion and doesn't show up anywhere on the damage report. So overall he's better. However, he needs a burst team behind him. Just because he can stay alive forever, even at level 100 against a full level 300 team, he will be the last one to die at T4. However, if you don't have the huge damage alongside him, he will be staying alive for nothing. Like, unless you can get the kills behind him, it makes no difference. He would definitely pair well with any of the burst heroes. Kurt, Themis might go well with Valkyrie, all of that. He is an anti-Valkyrie, he's an anti-Skuld, he's anti all sorts of healing. He is just an amazing, amazing hero. On top of that, he's the second fastest unit in the game because he's a cleric that gets cleric speed. So overall, very amazing, but again, needs work to use. You can't just throw him on any old team and expect to do well, especially if he is like a T4 and you're pairing him with T2s or 10 stars just to flesh out an aura. Wasted. Complete waste of effort. His damage reduction is based on his living allies, which means that the moment that someone dies, he now takes more damage. He doesn't tank as well. So he's only good if the whole team is strong, if the whole team can pump out high damage and all of that. If you've got that, he's absolutely amazing. He could be one if he didn't have all those criteria. Gear for him, testing shows that he's going to do well with a speed, rune, and energy artifact. Otherwise, you can throw a bone grip on him, especially if he's not T2 with T2 damage reduce. He's going to absolutely need a bone grip. Ideally, he really needs T2 damage reduce to keep him going. So overall, very strong hero. T1, probably speed, T2, damage reduction, T3, is crowd control resistant. Okay, last place is actually Freya. Now, she is everyone's favorite queen. She's still very strong, but again, unreliable because her petrify is only 36%. So she's really, really good, especially for PvE. Like Den Planet Trial, where you can retry 1,000 times. But if you're going into PvP where you can only try once, sometimes she doesn't do so well. So she's not always the best choice for like a first T4, but supporting a whole rest of her team that does damage, she often can help out at least a little bit. The thing about her T4 is she steals energy at a much higher rate, which means that she can fire her skill off more often, which means that if she petrifies people and then she fires again, the next skill is going to be much, much stronger because she gets a huge attack boost after she petrifies someone. So gear for her. Now, she is a funny hero. If all of your opponents are running speed on their Freyas, then you got to run speed on yours. So you actually have to pay attention to that. If your opponents are not running speed on theirs, then you don't need to run speed on yours, and you can run a Death Break rune. So it's all gonna completely depend on your opponents. And energy, definitely energy artifact. So T1 is either speed or attack, and then T2 damage reduce, T3 bubble. Completely depends on your opponents. I like to run mine not on speed because I'm already using Lorelei to drop their speed a little bit. So, you know, you can play with it however you want. So I have a different ranking over here prior to T4. Reasoning for that is Azathoth really needs his T2 damage reduce to be useful. Bale doesn't have his T3 bubble to protect him, and so Bale desperately needs Skuld. So both Azathoth and Bale now become asterisked heroes in which they need a lot of help, whereas Freya is just Freya. She does what she does with or without any help. Skuld helps, but she is a very fast unit, so she really can get away with firing her skill first in most cases, especially if she's geared for speed. Freya ends up number 1 only prior to T4. So if you're looking for a hero to take to T4 first out of the 3, it would be Freya because she's the easiest to use. However, once you've got a few more T4s built, then you definitely would go for Bale Azathoth, like as the other ranking would show. So this is my new top 3 heroes list. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any critiques, questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. As always, some heroes do better than others for some people. Your team composition makes a huge difference in how heroes are used. So it's not an overall best, it's just a general, for most people, best ranking. So that's all for this time. See you guys next time.